Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Monday, September 16th. I hope everybody had a great weekend. We have a lot to get through. Some breaking news. Just a couple of hours ago, Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers, the second-year quarterback, a man who has only started 18 games in his entire career, has just been benched for Andy Dalton. That is our top story today. We're also going to break down a lot of other week 2 topics in the NFL, as well as previewing the final game of the week between the Eagles and the Falcons happening tonight on Monday Night Football. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to start off with the breaking news coming out of the NFL as Bryce Young has officially been benched. Not something I expected to see or talk about this year. I felt like a guy, Bryce Young, who was the number 1 overall pick just last year, would have a little bit of a longer leash. Now, I know this is his second head coach. Dave Canales comes in. He says after looking at all the tape, we found out that, or we think he doesn't give us the best chance to win. And while I do agree with him, while I do sit here and I say, yes, I think Bryce Young is not the answer, at least right now, on this Carolina team, Andy Dalton is 36 years old. Andy Dalton is probably better, but is this really better for the future? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say Bryce Young will turn out to be this awesome player. It's pretty clear he is not going to turn into that guy. Bryce Young has consistently been inaccurate. We've seen lots and lots of issues with him in the pocket, not being able to see over the offensive line. And that's not to say short quarterbacks can't work in the NFL. We've seen short quarterbacks work in the NFL before. Hell, Kyler Murray is one of those guys who's being incredibly productive. We saw what he did just last week, cooking the Rams defense that looked very competent against a very good Lions team just a week ago. Kyler Murray is doing his thing. We've had Drew Brees do his thing. Russell Wilson, for a time, was able to do his thing, right? There are short quarterbacks in the NFL that have been able to work. Bryce Young is not one of them. Bryce Young's athleticism, the thing that really set him apart, made him that number 1 overall pick in college football, has not been able to translate to the NFL. He's not able to move in the pocket, get away from the athletes in the NFL like he was able to do in college. It's just not working for him. And I agree with Dave Canales' decision to bench him, but this is a guy that's only started 18 games in his career. And in those 18 games, he's played behind arguably the worst offensive line in all of football for all of them. We talk about getting him weapons, and yes, they got him weapons. They brought in a couple weapons. They drafted a couple weapons, and he hasn't been able to get the ball to them, and the Panthers have been dreadful. And yes, again, I'm going to reiterate this. I think if the Panthers want to win games, this is the best short-term solution. But this was a make it or break it season for Bryce Young, for the Panthers, right? We all kind of knew it was going to be, and clearly the coaching staff, this new coaching staff, had that same idea in mind. Hey, this is a make it or break it season for Bryce Young. But 2 weeks in is a little early, in my opinion, to determine that it's broken. 2 weeks in is a little early, in my opinion, to say, hey, this guy's career is done. Because I'm not exaggerating here, at least I don't think I am, when I say this is the end of his career. He's not going to get another chance like this. He has burned out in the NFL after just 18 games, and this is a guy that I believe should be able to play the rest of the season. I think it's only fair to him, to the Panthers, to the organization, an organization that ended up trading away a first overall pick that turned into Caleb Williams, and we'll get to Caleb Williams later on in the show during our rookie review in segment 4 here. But you trade a guy away. You trade away the entire future of your team to the Bears, who end up getting 3, and they still have another pick to go, and also DJ Moore. Very good players in the process. You mortgaged your future for this guy, and to give up on him after just one season. After just one season, I think it's too quick. I think I think it's fair to give him the rest of his season, right? I really do. And again, I want to reiterate, this is a guy that I don't believe is an NFL caliber starting quarterback. But what they've just done after 2 weeks of an NFL season behind a team that has never had a good offensive line. Heck, never had a good offensive line, never had an okay offensive line, never had a good running back behind there to take some of the stress off of the quarterback. You can have the greatest wide receivers in the league, but if you don't have a running back there that, makes play action or, just takes a little bit of pressure off the quarterback, it's a lot on him. And again, I'll say it one more time. I don't think Bryce Young is better than Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton, even at 36, I think will have a better ability to push the ball downfield, get it to some of these playmaking receivers. But I don't think Bryce Young is this bad. I think if you got him in a situation, you got him behind the 49ers offensive line. You got him behind the Lions offensive line. You got him behind one of these elite offensive lines in the NFL. I think Bryce Young still has a chance to figure it out. But now that you've benched him in week 2, you've sentenced him to, at best, backup quarterback forever. And with his performances, I don't think he's going to get much of another chance. Maybe you can trade him. Maybe he has a Zach Wilson kind of career arc. Maybe he has a Geno Smith kind of career arc where he sticks around on a team with an established quarterback for a very long time and finally gets his shot. And we've seen what Geno does. He now has he came out with this last week, 0 throws off target. Literally a perfect game. First time since 2021 that anyone has done that. That is incredibly impressive. Geno Smith has turned into a great quarterback. Maybe we can see Bryce Young have that same kind of arc. But at this point in his career, he's done. There's not going to be another team that's going to take a chance on him. And the Panthers, by my estimation, by a lot of other people's estimations, I'm sure, are going to get that number 1 overall pick. Are going to draft another quarterback, and that's going to be wraps on Bryce Young's career. It was short. It wasn't what he wanted. It didn't live up to anything. He is absolutely a bust at that number 1 overall pick, but I don't think it's fair. I really don't think it's fair to bench him, especially for a season that, hey, it's the Panthers. What are we doing? This isn't just a Bryce Young problem. I know Dave Canales and David Tepper, the owner, want to win. You look at the state of their stadium, they're barely drawing in 100 people at the game. The tickets are like $1 right now. It's kind of crazy how cheap it is to go to a Panthers game. But still, this is a team that even outside of Bryce Young isn't going to win that many games. Sure, Andy Dalton gives them a better chance to win. Maybe Andy Dalton gives them a chance to win against bad teams like the Giants, bad teams that they're going to play later on in the schedule in their own division. But when you look at their schedule, I mean, it's still not easy. They take on, the Bengals. They take on the Bears and their defense, the Raiders and their defense. I mean, there aren't too many cupcakes here. You get the Broncos. You get the Giants. You get, if you want to call the Raiders a cupcake. But this isn't a schedule that's going to be easy. You get the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Bucks twice. The Cardinals are a good team. The Saints twice. We'll talk about whether or not they're real in a second. But these aren't just teams that you can sit here and say, oh, they'll walk all over it if Andy Dalton's in. Maybe they'll put up more of a fight. Maybe they won't lose by 35 points. But that defense is awful. That defense is ridiculously bad. And no amount of changes at the quarterback position is going to make this team into a playoff contender. This is a dead season already in my mind for the Panthers. Only 11% of teams have ever made it to the playoffs from a 0-2 start. So their season is basically done. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for me to say, Bryce Young, you're done. We're giving up on you. We're throwing you to the side. Even if Andy Dalton does give them the best chance to win. I think you need to see if there's any chance that Bryce Young can be that Bryce Young can be even a viable backup for the future of this Panthers organization. And they apparently have decided that no matter what, he's not going to be that. But let me know what you think. I was completely surprised by this. I thought they would at least wait until halfway through the season. But I'm way off on this apparently. And maybe my opinion is a little unpopular there, because I do think Andy Dalton gives them a chance to win. But still, the Panthers aren't going to win very many games with him. So this change just feels like you're throwing out Bryce Young already. Maybe that's the worst trade. Maybe that's up there now with one of the worst trades in NFL history. An absolute nothing for what turns into a bunch of first-round picks, a first overall pick that the Bears make into 4 or 5 good starters. But anyway, let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to continue to break down more Week 2 drama. In segment 2, we're going to take a look at the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are a team that have scored over 40 points in both of their first 2 games. We'll talk about if that makes them real contenders after taking down the Cowboys, just dismantling them. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, September 16th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over how the Panthers have officially benched last year's number 1 overall pick and second-year quarterback Bryce Young in favor of 36-year-old Andy Dalton. Mind-blowing breaking news, honestly. Was not expecting that to happen this early in the season. Interesting, though. In this segment, we are going to continue to break down some of the outcomes from Week 1, including one of the most surprising ones, which we'll get to in this segment, with the New Orleans Saints absolutely destroying the Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk about whether that means the Saints are contenders or the Cowboys are pretenders, maybe both. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, September 16th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the New Orleans Saints. And I have to say, I'm one of those people that was very low on the Saints heading into the season. I didn't think their offense, even under new offensive coordinator Kubiak, would be able to make that jump. I did not think that Dennis Allen would make it past this season. I wasn't sure if Derek Carr would be starting every single game this season, and yet look at where we stand. The New Orleans Saints have scored the fourth most points in NFL history in the first two games of the season. 91 points, 47 against the Panthers, 44 against the Dallas Cowboys and their vaunted defense. What's going on with those Saints? Are the Saints real? Well, let's start off with the defense, because that's an easy question to answer. The Saints defense, although I discounted their win against the Carolina Panthers, is a very, very solid unit. Dennis Allen is a very good defensive coach. He always has been. That was his role with the Saints for a very, very long time before when Sean Payton was the head coach. He continues his role here as that awesome defensive coordinator. That's a very good defense. That part is for real. As far as the offense, this is where the questions have to start, because week one was against these Carolina Panthers, the now Bryce Youngless Carolina Panthers. That didn't show me much, honestly. 47 points is awesome, but against the Panthers, who lose their best player, it doesn't show me much. Week two, going into Dallas, taking on the Cowboys with their vaunted defense and putting up 40 points makes me rethink my thoughts on the Saints. Because, I mean, doing it against the Panthers is one thing, right? I feel like any good team in the NFL should be able to put up 30 points on the Panthers. We saw the Chargers put up 28, basically just running the ball down their throats the whole time this week. I think that should be a baseline for going up against the Panthers. The Saints, with their air attack, with Derek Carr doing things that we haven't seen him do in almost 10 years, since he was in MVP conversations with the Raiders back in 2016, they're going to be a problem, especially in a very weak NFC South. Again, they get to take on the Panthers twice. They already checked one of those boxes off. The Bucs look really good, but they have weaknesses. The Falcons I thought were going to be really good. They have very clear weaknesses. We'll see if that was just rust from week one or if it was, the real thing tonight. Excuse me. But the rest of the Saints schedule isn't necessarily the hardest thing either. They take on the NFC East, the Giants, the Commanders. Not the toughest teams. They've already taken out the Cowboys. They get the Eagles next week. If they can start off 3-0 with wins against the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Panthers, that is a dangerous, dangerous resume and something that's going to be really, really hard to look over. This has been one of the bigger talking points all week, right? Or all day, I should say. Are the Saints contenders? And I'm leaning towards yes on this one, because we get to see the Saints offense push the ball downfield effectively. Rashid Shaheed is one of the best deep threats in the league. Pure deep threats, pure speed threats in all of football. Looks like a young Deshaun Jackson out there. Maybe not quite to that level, but that's 2 weeks in a row with a home run, 60-plus yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed, a guy that has always flashed that potential to be that deep threat weapon. But Derek Carr last season wasn't always able to get him the ball, whether that be because the offensive line is not very good or because he just wasn't getting open. This offense hasn't changed that much either from last year. It's practically the same. Alvin Kamara looks completely different than last year. I thought he was done after putting up career lows in yards per carry and efficiency numbers, basically not being able to run the ball behind that awful Saints offensive line, and that's really the only thing that's changed. Minor upgrades to the offensive line. Not much else. Alvin Kamara is now rushing for 5 yards a carry. Alvin Kamara has scored 6 touchdowns from scrimmage, I believe, including 4 yesterday against the Dallas Cowboys. He's not only running the ball for 5 yards a carry, which is a complete upturn back to where he was pre-suspension, but this Saints team is able to get him the ball, and he's now taking screen passes 60 yards completely untouched against a good defense. If this is what the Saints are able to do, if this is what the Saints are going to be looking forward, this is a very scary team because they've always had the pieces. We talked about for a very long time the Saints being able to just kind of tread water despite not having, the most talented roster, but their roster has always been talented. Their defense has always been pretty stacked. Their offense has always had big names. Chris Olave is there as the wide receiver one. He's been kind of underrated, I think, for a while. It's just the offensive line just has not been there. Sean Payton kind of got a little hesitant with his play calling when Drew Brees' arm turned to noodles down the stretch of his career, and they hadn't been able to really improve on that since. You get a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, and now they're able to push the ball downfield. They're able to stretch the defenses. They're able to avoid those stacked boxes. And most importantly, the offensive line has just turned a corner out of nowhere. And as long as this offensive line keeps up their play, they survived a huge test against the Cowboys. They survived a huge test against my pick for Defensive Player of the Year, Micah Parsons. And they have a solid corner. They've got solid corners over there in Dallas. In Dallas as well. Trayvon Diggs has been burned a couple times, but he's a ball hawk, and they were able to keep the ball safe most of the time. Derek Carr is looking really impressive. He's looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year. I think the Saints are absolutely true contenders, and it's hard to look at these offensive numbers and these defensive numbers as well and think much otherwise. Again, I know you can kind of take half of that with a grain of salt, but doing that against a Cowboys team that was consistently ranked top 10 in power rankings, some people had them ranked as high as in the top 5. I know I put them, I believe, at number 8 in my power rankings. This is a Saints team that can cause some trouble. Now, am I going to crown them Super Bowl contenders right now? No. But they were out of the playoff picture for me. To be completely honest, they've squarely put themselves smack dab in that playoff conversation. And if they're able to do it week 3 against the Eagles, I think they're absolutely going to be able to be in those conversations for the best team in the NFC. We saw the 49ers lose to the Vikings. The Vikings are a good team. They're not the best team in the NFC. Who else is better in the NFC? Are we looking at the Eagles? They looked really good, but are they really the best team in the NFC? We'll see. They get to play the Saints next week. The Cowboys, they've already beaten them. Are the Bucs the best team in the NFC? No. The Lions, they just lost to the Bucs. The NFC is looking very weak. There's no one sitting on top of the throne on the top over there, and I think if the Saints are able to beat the Eagles in week 3 after dominating the Cowboys, dominating the Panthers in these first 2 weeks of the season, you could have a serious conversation about the Saints being the team to beat in the NFC conference. I think they're for real. Let me know what you think, though. I know that might be going a little bit far, but this offense looks for real and looks scary going up against a very good defense. But again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything Saints, if you think they're for real or not. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to, again, continue talking about the NFL, this time turning our attention to the Harbaugh brothers. One of those teams is going up. One of those teams is going down. We'll talk about if either of those trends are for real and what needs to change with the Ravens and what needs to continue for the Chargers for their seasons to fix themselves or continue on the path that they're on. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, September 16th. If you are just tuning in, we've been going over all the biggest storylines from the NFL Week 2, the fallout from it. Bryce Young officially benched by the Panthers today, just a couple of hours ago. Insane, as Andy Dalton, now 36 years old, will be the starter in Carolina for the foreseeable future. Are the Saints real? We talked about that in the last segment. In this segment, we're going to take a look at the Harbaugh brothers and where their two teams are sitting. The Ravens at 0-2, the Chargers at 2-0. I bet you most people would have had it the other way around. I know I did. At least I had the Ravens at 2-0 and the Chargers at 1-1, but very interesting turning of events. We'll see. We'll talk about what the Ravens need to do to fix it, as well as the Chargers need to do to keep their season on track the way it's going right now. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature to do the exact same thing. If you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, September 16th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Harbaugh brothers and their two teams. One team's going up, one team is going down, and we're going to start off with the team that's going down, the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are coming off of a season where they won the NFL regular season. Woo! They had the best record in all of football in the regular season, took them all the way to a AFC championship game where they lost at home to the Kansas City Chiefs, the future Super Bowl champions, by just 7 points. And now they're 0-2. The Ravens seemingly made some improvements this offseason. They bring in Derrick Henry, trade him out for their old running backs, which are now the stable of backs over in LA with the Chargers. And John Harbaugh's brother, Jim Harbaugh, who accepted the positions over there, J.K. Dobbins, finally healthy, is going off. Gus Edwards will find a way to vulture some touchdowns because that's just what Gus Edwards does. But getting back to the Ravens, Derrick Henry comes in. That's supposed to be an immediate upgrade. Their defense, they lose a couple key pieces, but I love their draft. They don't have Nate Wiggins. He got into a car accident, but he should be back soon. Their offensive line is really where the questions begin because they are only returning 2 of their 5 starters, and the other 3 look awful. It's not looking very good for the Ravens over there, at least in week 1. Week 2, questions have started to arise about Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker had once been crowned the best kicker in all of football. Still maybe is crowned by a lot of people, but I think he's very quickly losing his shine. He's 1 for 7 in his last 7 kicks, of over 50 yards. We see guys like Brandon Aubrey, like Jake Moody, like Kaimi Fairbairn hitting 50-yard field goals on the regular. Like, Fairbairn hit 6 of them in the first 2 weeks, maybe even 7. I kind of lost count in the middle of that game last night. Brendan Aubrey of the Cowboys, hits 6 field goals. Hits a 66-yard field goal, tying Justin Tucker's record that bounced off of a crossbar in a domed stadium on the river in Cleveland with plenty of room to spare. And she was trotted back out there to hit a 71-yarder, one that I think had a chance of going in. It's time I think we have that conversation if Justin Tucker is still the best quarterback in all of is Justin Tucker still the best kicker in all of football, which not the most important question to have right now, but it is something interesting to talk about. The Ravens, who, again, usually are very reliable in the special teams unit, kind of have a little bit of a decline there. But the bigger thing is their offensive line. Their offensive line needs to find a way to turn it around. They go up against a very good Raiders defensive line, but they should still be dominating. Their defense is a little bit worrying to me, giving up a whole bunch of points to a Raiders team, letting them have a huge comeback down the stretch. The Ravens are a team that are built to hold a lead. At least in my opinion, they're built to hold a lead. You have Lamar Jackson as your quarterback. He should be able to keep the ball on the ground. You have two great tight ends. You can run those jumbo packages all the time. You have King Derrick Henry, a guy that if you just keep handing him the ball as the defenses get more and more worn down, will continue to punish them. That's why he was so successful in Tennessee. The Ravens need to figure out how to use him, and they don't need to give him 30 carries a game. They don't. They don't want to do that. They don't need to do that. But they need to give him the ball, be able to give him the ball in the fourth quarter, and they weren't really doing that this game. They weren't really, and they were better at it, I will say. They gave him about 20 carries in this game, which I think is a fine workload for him, but they need to be able to trust him both early and late in the game. They should be running the clock like nobody's business, especially when they're winning in the fourth quarter. And maybe that's a little conservative. I know they're trying to score. I know they're trying to put points up on the board, and I'm not saying you can't do that, but they should be able to hold a lead. This is a Ravens team that is literally built like no other team in the league to hold a lead in the fourth quarter with their defensive players, their offensive philosophy. This is not a team that should be squandering 10-point leads halfway through the fourth quarter. This is not a team that should be losing like that to the Raiders. This is not a team that should be suffering from those kind of issues, and yet they are. Taking a look over at the other Harbaugh brother, he's running their team like I think the Ravens should. Honestly, I know the Ravens want to be able to be a passing team. I know the Ravens want Lamar Jackson to be able to be that pocket passer that everyone knows he can be, that he proved he could be last season. But the Chargers, with a certified great throwing quarterback in Justin Herbert, are letting their strengths, their run game, do the talking. J.K. Dobbins has been running over everybody in the first 2 weeks, and that's awesome to see. The Ravens need to get back to that. The Ravens need to learn a thing or two from Jim Harbaugh, trust their defense, and run the dang ball. I don't care if they don't want to give Derrick Henry 30 touches. I think if they really want to turn their season around, if they really want to be the most effective team that they can be, they need to be able to give Derrick Henry 25, 30 touches a game. They don't have to, but I think they need to get over that mental block of not wanting to. I really do. Derrick Henry is a guy that can catch passes. It's not a specialty. But the Chargers, on the other hand, they know their identity, and I think that's fun to watch. Sure, they've done it against the Panthers. Sure, they've done it against the Raiders, two teams that aren't that great at football. But still, this is a Chargers team that's been successful at what they want to be successful at. And at the end of the day, that's all you need to be as a football team. You need to know your identity and you need to know how to win with it. And the Chargers are nothing if not knowing who they are and what they are good at. And that is running the football. And if they continue to run effectively, we've seen running the ball become more and more of a thing this year in the league, especially. Again, I talked about it last week. I'll talk about it this week. The ebbs and flow of sports. I've talked about it in hockey, especially because that's the one that you see it the most obviously in. Goal scoring goes up. Goalies get better. Goal scoring goes way down. This is happening in football too, right? Passing. Quarterbacks. The era of quarterbacks in the 2000s, the early 2000s, 10s, go way up. Passing yards go way up. We see 5,000-yard seasons. We see 50 touchdown seasons. Defenses respond. Go to the cover 2 look to stop those deep plays. Stop crowding the box as often. Running backs get a little worse. Now kids are looking up at quarterbacks instead of running backs. They're going over there. Now defenses are getting better at stopping the run. And now we see teams like the Chargers. We see teams like the Lions being able to run the ball down people's throats. Heck, even the Green Bay Packers in week 1 were able to run the ball down people's throats. This is going to become a viable strategy as the game continues to evolve. And this is just how it's going to go in the life cycle of every single sport. We're going to have ups at one thing, defenses will respond, then another thing will change, offense will get better, then defense will catch up, offense, defense, maybe defense will even pass for a second. But that's just how the game evolves. That's how we got from no forward passes to forward passes being dominant in the league. That's how we got from quarterbacks are statues in the pockets to every guy being able to run at least a little bit. They're not all Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, Cam Newton, but Patrick Mahomes is a good example. He's just very shifty in the pocket. He is able to move around. We see what happens with guys like Kirk Cousins who are struggling to move around in the pocket. They look awful. And maybe that's just weak run rust. We'll find out tonight. But we see the evolution of the game, and we're starting to see it again. And the Chargers are a team that, if they're able to run the ball the way they have been all season long, with the way that the game is changing, and with Justin Herbert at quarterback to be able to throw it over the top, that is a dangerous combination right there. They could make some noise. The Ravens need to learn a little bit. John Harbaugh needs to learn a little bit from his brother and focus on the run game if they want to get better. Plain and simple. They just need to say, hey, we're a running back team. Focus on that. That's my thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Ravens, on the Chargers, what the Harbaugh brothers can learn from each other here. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to go through our Week 2 rookie report. Take a look at the wide receivers. Take a look at the quarterbacks. Take a look at all of the rookies that had action in Week 2 and see who's on top of that Rookie of the Year race. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Monday, September 16th. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, and before we get into our segment 4, we have some breaking news. Breaking news coming out of the NFL. Another receiver from the Rams is going on to IR. Cooper Kupp joins Puka Nacua on the IR as the Rams team is falling apart. Both of their top 2 receivers, half of their offensive line, their defense is going down. Matthew Stafford gets hurt. This is not the injury bug. The injury monster is after the Rams. They just have the worst injury luck. Now DeMarcus Robinson, number 1 receiver, maybe Tutu Atwell. We'll talk a little bit more about it, see who can step up tomorrow. But breaking news, the Rams send Cooper Kupp to the IR after he had such a promising start to his season, and he left early, right at about halftime in that game against the Cardinals this week. In this segment, though, we are going to talk a little bit about rookies. Maybe a rookie receiver from the Rams can step up. But we're going to take a look at the rookie report. We had a bunch of really good weeks from rookie receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. stepping out of the shadows, going 4 for 130 and 2 touchdowns. Malik Neighbors, his first ever 100-yard game, and more as Jaden Daniels gets his first win. We'll talk about the good, we'll talk about the bad as well. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, September 16th. But like I was saying, in this segment here, we are going to get into the NFL rookie check-in, the NFL rookie report, and we're going to start off with the wide receivers because the wide receivers have been going off. Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jaguars scored another touchdown this week. He only had 2 catches, but he was incredibly effective for a Jaguars offense that's been very anemic to start off the season. But the top two rookie receivers really stood out. In Washington, we had a rookie-on-rookie battle. Malik Neighbors goes over 100 yards for the first time in his career, catches his first career touchdown, was cooking Washington's admittedly awful secondary. Completely, no one could guard him. He did drop a pass that maybe would have sealed the game. The Giants didn't have a kicker, so not sure if that actually would have sealed the game for the Giants. But 4th down, has a ball on the sideline, goes through his hands. The Commanders go down the field and kick the game-winning field goal. Shout out to Austin Siebert real quick. 7 field goals in a game. That's kind of crazy. The record's 8. We've been really close the last couple weeks. 2 6 field goal performances and a 7 field goal performance in the first 2 weeks. It's kind of insane. But regardless, the Giants and Malik Neighbors is going to be special, especially if the Giants are able to put another threat so he's not double and triple covered all the time. The way he can get open, the way that he's shifty in the field, being able to break long gains on short passes, the Giants should be able to use him very creatively. He looked awesome. Another fellow rookie receiver that went off I talked about in the intro, Marvin Harrison Jr., after a very quiet week 1 catch for 4 yards, goes off. And it was all in the first quarter. 4 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I know some people are going to be a little concerned that he didn't have any cover. He didn't have anything else after the first 2 quarters, but the Cardinals were up by 30 the rest of the game. They weren't throwing it, airing it out like that. So not too much to be concerned about. Marvin Harrison shows up in a big way, makes up for his week 1 performance. Kyler Murray, that connection with Marvin Harrison is going to be deadly, especially if they keep feeding him the ball. He only had 5 targets, so he's not that super number 1 option. But again, they weren't throwing the ball like that after the first quarter, after the first half, especially because they were up by so much against a very injury-depleted Rams team. But getting to the quarterbacks here. Excuse me, sorry about that. Getting to the quarterbacks here. We have 1 okay, 2 bad. Jaden Daniels in Washington gets his first win. He didn't score a single touchdown. Led 7 drives total. All of them ended in field goals. 6 of them he was able to get the Commanders down to the red zone. In none of them were they able to convert. Jaden Daniels needs to be able to punch in the touchdowns, especially against a Giants defense that isn't particularly impressive. Now, it's not an awful defense. I will say that. They have some guys, they have some names, but this is a Commanders team that ran about 30, I'm exaggerating here, but ran too many screen passes. Lots of quick game stuff, and especially against a Giants defense that is very good at getting to players and gang tackling them. That's not going to work. They need to be able to push the ball downfield. And the rare occasions that they were trying to push the ball downfield, the offensive line was not holding up enough against a very good Giants pass rush. They need to be able to develop stuff downfield, especially with their top receiver, Terry McLaurin. He was unable to get anything longer than 5 yards all game. Jaden Daniels did his thing. He did a very, very good job taking what was given to him, listening to the play calls, driving his team down the field, engineering a game-winning drive. That's all you can expect out of a rookie quarterback in his first ever home game. He did a great job. But you want to see more. He's a guy that is coming off of Rookie of the Week honors in Week 1, where he was just the best rookie quarterback. I don't expect him to win against this week. I expect that to go to Marvin Harrison. But still, we take a look at what he's doing with the rest, considering the rest of his quarterback in Patriots, and he is head and shoulders above the rest of them. For example, Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a guy that in preseason looked like one of the rising stars in football. He was able to complete almost all of his passes. He had a great completion percentage. The issue was, and still is, he has no idea, and the Broncos have no idea how to move the ball downfield. On throws that are longer than 5 yards in the air, he has the worst completion percentage in the NFL. He believe he's 11 for 36 with 4 interceptions. 4 interceptions in his first 2 games. And it's not like the receivers are trash. You have Cortland Sutton, who's a very good jump ball receiver. You have a lot of options, even for the dump down game, which is all that Bryce Young all that Bo Nix has been able to do effectively, which is not able to lead an offense. We saw what happened against Seattle, not very effective, scored a touchdown in garbage time with his legs. We saw what happened this week against the Steelers, and to call that anything but atrocious. I mean, the Steelers have a great defense. I know that. Everyone knows that. TJ Watt is a difference maker, a havoc causer, someone that you don't want to see lined up against you if you are a quarterback. But Bo Nix needs to be better at throwing the ball even 5 yards down the field. I brought out the 10-yard stat, but 5 yards. You can't even get it halfway to the sticks on first down. It's really disappointing. It really is. You're supposed to have an offensive genius at head coach in Sean Payton, but he's been incredibly conservative. We talked about it when we talked about the Saints. He's been incredibly conservative for the last few years of his career, and that isn't changing with Bo Nix. Whether that's what he expected out of Bo Nix or it's because all Bo Nix can do, it needs to change. Bo Nix needs to have the ability to throw the ball downfield. Otherwise, you're not going to win games. Maybe you turn to a guy like Jarrett Stidham. Maybe you turn to a guy like Zach Wilson, who at least at a minimum have the ability to push the ball downfield. And I'm not saying you need to make that change now. I'm just saying there is a line where if your quarterback is not able to throw it 10 yards down the field, if your quarterback is not able to throw it 5 yards down the field, you might as well line up in Wildcat every single play. You might as well not even have a quarterback on the field, because I bet you could have a running back that could run a couple screen passes, but you need to have a quarterback that can threaten the ball down the field, open up those running lanes so the offense can be effective. And until that happens, the Broncos are going to continue to look like one of the worst offenses in the league. Bo Nix is not fixing that. And then the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has not looked great. He came out when he was drafted, texted the new punter out of Iowa, hey, you're not going to have to punt that much. He's punted for 200 yards more than the Bears' offense have gained. Caleb Williams, and it's not his fault. I'm not saying it is. Caleb Williams looked okay last night when he was able to get the ball out quick, like Jaden Daniels was doing all game. He was incredibly efficient, but it was all screen passes. It was all short passes, all first reads, all quick time passes. When he held the ball for any longer than like 2.5 seconds, that Bears offensive line was unable to help him, was unable to protect him for any kind of acceptable amount of time. That Bears offense was unable to hold back a Houston pass rush that, while it is very good, is nothing like some of these teams that they're going to play soon, is nothing like the Rams pass rush even, is nothing like the Lions pass rush. Aiden Hutchinson's with five sacks in just one game against the Bucs. A much better offensive line. You have to play them twice. This is going to be a tough year for Caleb Williams, and we saw his escapability. He was, even in vain, able to escape 4 out of 5 pass rushers a lot of the time. It's dangerous, though. He loses a lot of yards on those sacks. He gets in troubles. That's where he threw his interceptions against the blitz. He needs to be able to get that lookout, get better against the blitz. This Bears defense is doing everything they can to win these games. Everything. That Bears defense is awesome. They held a very good Texans offense to 19 points, turned them over in the red zone, kept the Bears in this game even when their offense was unable to move the ball point blank, period. If the Bears want to be a good team, if they want to not ruin another great defense like they did when Mitch Trubisky was here, they need to fix that offensive line, and they need to do it quickly because Caleb Williams is going to develop bad habits with the football if he's continuously rushed this much, this quickly. Now, he looks fine under pressure. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying he's been bad. He's been okay. But that offensive line, especially the interior offensive line, is unacceptable the way that they've been playing, and Caleb Williams is going to start to develop bad habits with them. And that's not going to be good for the future of the Bears. We'll see what happens, because Justin Fields is winning games now behind a competent offensive line. Not that he's doing that much, but they're winning games at a minimum. Not even putting up 20 points, but games are being won. We'll see what happens, though. Let me know what you think of these rookies. Who's in charge of the offensive rookie of the year right now? I think it's Jaden Daniels. Maybe it's even one of those receivers. But again, let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to preview Monday Night Football between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, September 16th. If you are just tuning in, we've just gone over a lot of craziness that happened in Week 2 of the NFL season, including Bryce Young being benched in favor of 36-year-old Andy Dalton. Take a look around the NFL rookie offensive players, including Caleb Williams' struggles. We talked about if the Saints are real and what's going on with the Ravens and what they can do to fix it. In this segment, we are going to end our show talking about Monday Night Football. Tonight, we have a matchup between the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, putting up 3 touchdowns in Brazil, looking to build off of a huge performance in his Philadelphia debut. Today, getting his first home game in Philly. Played plenty of away games there. His first home game in Philly, taking on Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons, a team that needs a big performance out of their quarterback. Kirk Cousins, who wasn't really able to move around against a very, very good TJ Watt and the Steelers. But in this segment, we are going to get into all of that. Before we do that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, September 16th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into some Monday Night Football preview. The Eagles taking on the Falcons. The Eagles are 5.5-point favorites in this game, and I don't necessarily think, at least based on week 1, that the Falcons are going to be able to put up a fight. Now, that being said, week 2's put up a lot of surprises. The Saints dominating the Cowboys, amongst other things. The Raiders beating the Ravens there. The Falcons are a team that if Kirk Cousins is able to be the guy that we saw pre-injury and drive the ball downfield, able to do play action, able to move around in the pocket, not scramble, forget scrambling. If he's able to move around in the pocket even just a little bit, if he's able to, evade those pass rushers, step up, step back, step left, step right, get his power and weight into a throw, they could be good against a Eagles defense that was susceptible to the long ball, was susceptible to those big plays against the Packers Friday last week in Brazil. This is a team that, while they were pretty good against the run for most of the game, they were able and very susceptible against those deep balls. Jaden Reed had a bunch of those when he got behind the defense. We can see some of that with maybe Drake London having a big week. Maybe we see Kyle Pitts have a big week. This is a team that has weapons. Bijan in the past game, we just need to see if Kirk Cousins is able to be the Kirk Cousins of old. And that will and always has been the question of this Falcons team. Because the Falcons made a big swing this year. The Falcons went out and paid Kirk Cousins all that money coming off of that Achilles injury, and he has not been able to move. Maybe that's play calling. Maybe that's what he's got comfortable with. But if he is unable to move, again, this Eagles team is going to absolutely destroy him. I don't have too much confidence that he is going to be able to move around based off of week 1. And if he isn't, we're on Michael Penix alert. Potentially on Michael Penix alert. Michael Penix, of course, was drafted with the 8th overall pick in this year's NFL draft, the 4th quarterback taken off of the board, ahead of J.J. McCarthy, ahead of Bo Nix, behind Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. One of the most interesting picks in all of the draft. Maybe it was an insurance policy in case Kirk looked like this and wasn't ready. In that case, bravo for the Falcons for having a backup plan. They didn't play him in the preseason, though. Maybe they were trying to emulate the Packers, getting a quarterback way too early, sitting him for his entire rookie contract. I don't think that's what they say the plan was. I don't know if that's something you can really just hope to emulate all the time, especially while you pay the quarterback from somewhere else during that offseason. Makes it look a little bad. But Michael Penix, in his short, limited action in the preseason, looked good. He was able to push the ball downfield. He was able to move around in the pocket. Again, preseason is not the regular season. We see that with Bo Nix especially. But if Kirk Cousins is unable to push the ball down the field, if Kirk Cousins is checking the ball down and unable to move around in the pocket, it doesn't make sense for him to be out there. This is a Falcons team that's trying to win games. This is a Falcons team that went all in, traded for a couple of key defensive pieces, traded for Matthew Judon, signed Justin Simmons off the streets, a very, very good safety, a very, very good pass rusher. But they're not going to be able to do anything offensively without the quarterback. And if Kirk Cousins shows up like he did last week, I don't necessarily think Michael Penix gets in this game, but I think there's a real shot. Michael Penix gets in against the Chiefs, gets in against the Saints in week 4. If Kirk Cousins is unable to move around like he needs to. He just needs to be able to move around minimally, like Aaron Rodgers is doing. It's nothing impressive, but he's at least able to have his footwork and move around a little bit in the pocket. We are on Michael Penix watch, and right now on a scale of 0 to 5, if 0 is no shot, 5 is he's going to start, confirmed, we're sitting at about a 2. Michael Penix might come in. Be prepared for that. Be ready. My official score prediction, the Philadelphia Eagles win handily, 34-14. I just don't think Kirk Cousins is going to be able to push the ball downfield and really threaten the Falcons defense or the Eagles defense like Jordan Love was, because that's where they were susceptible. Not down low. They were tackling very well. It was over the top, deep passes. But again, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think is going to happen tonight. We'll break down everything that goes on tonight tomorrow, as well as having our NFL power rankings, our NCAA top 25 tomorrow, and any other big news. Break down the Rams a little bit as well. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Hope you tune back in tomorrow, same time, same place. Again, we'll be talking about all of the biggest news in sports, power rankings, NCAA top 25, and more. I'll see you same time, same place. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Been tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.